Mace Bendewald directed the video production of some of the biggest at-home workouts of all time, and he has a lot to teach about how to be compelling on camera. This is such a timely topic since many of us, for better or for worse, find ourselves needing to be on camera a lot these days. People connect to people. So in order to make meaningful connections, your audience needs to know you and like you. And Mason tells us how to do that. You'll learn how to tap into the invaluable art of charisma in this conversation with Mason Bendewald. Hi, I'm Erin Power.
And I'm Laura Rupsis.
We're certified health coaches, and this is Health Coach Radio.
This podcast is about the art, science, and business of health coaching.
We share our insider tips to help you become a better coach and entrepreneur.
And we interview expert guests to discover how they've made it in this growing field.
It's time for health coaches to make an impact.
It's time for Health Coach Radio.
All right, we've got Mason. How are you, Mason? Thanks for joining us.
I'm great. Thanks for having me on your show.
We are excited to talk to you because Erin and I have been pounding the table with folks that want to go to business as health coaches, the importance of content marketing and getting yourself out there and letting people know who you are. And what better way than on camera? And this is your expertise. So we can't wait to pick your brain. It is. So give us your backstory, if you don't mind. Tell us a little bit about who you are and kind of how you got here.
Yeah, I grew up in New York City, went to the High School of Performing Arts. It really made a huge impact on my life. I look back and I go, how incredibly fortunate I was to have that experience. And the reason why, it's like, what does high school have to do with your career? Is that fitness was not something I was looking to get into. But when I had this opportunity to direct a fitness video, I was in my early 30s and I was like, it's just like, might as well be a car commercial or something. I wanted to make films. I wanted to tell stories. And I was very fortunate that Beachbody was making this new product. And they said, the CEO said, hey, this is going to be completely different. It's extreme home fitness. And I latched onto this opportunity of the idea of it being different and said, well, great, because I want to do everything differently. Because prior to that, like the mainstay was Jane Fonda, who's her contribution to the industry is unbelievable. But there was a rubric to it. It was very pastel. It was very choreographed. Everything was. There was no broken third wall. And I wanted this to be a different experience. And so I basically broke all the rules. And what I wanted to do was tell a story and entertain the audience. And so I created characters, if you will. I had everybody that was in the background in P90X was also somebody that the trainer could talk to and knew something about. And so for those listening who are old enough or who have P90X, you'll remember some of the characters. You remember some of the moments. There was so many, today we'd call them memes, but call outs from those workouts that they're just workouts, but they entertained, they told a story, they did something. And that came from my background as an actor and a dancer, just going, I want to have fun. And so anybody going on camera today, I coach tons of trainers. And I say, the second you step in front of a camera, you need to entertain me. The fitness comes second and anything else you're doing. So if you're a CEO and you're giving a presentation, same thing. You have to think about your content's important, but your presentation is paramount.
Laura and I are educators. And so we kind of stand at the pulpit and teach health coaching stuff.
Sure.
And I think I'm thinking back, I was thinking about this as I was driving home from the gym this morning, because I just led a webinar last night and it was an hour long and it was just me flapping my gums about all the stuff that I needed to share. And I was like, man, that was probably pretty boring for those guys. I wonder if anyone's going to watch the replay. So this idea that, entertain me first. And so your point of view is this rule applies to anytime you're sort of communicating to any audience.
We communicate as humans. We tell stories to communicate 65% of our information. You read some texts and stuff, but when you're talking to people, it's it's often told in the point of view of a story, uh, Aaron, how was your drive to the gym this morning? Oh my gosh, the power lines were down. I had to go this way. It's a story. It's not just simply it took 15 minutes to get there or 5 minutes longer than normal. There's a story involved, and that's a form of entertainment. And so the trickier part is when you're presenting, when you're like, we're having a conversation now, so it's easier. We're asking questions, we're going back and forth. But when you're presenting, it's all on you, and you've got an audience, and that audience, like it or not, they always want to be entertained. That's what we do. We have a million channels to choose from. There's a million health coaches out there. There's a million trainers for what I do too, in different ways. I like to also say that when you're hyper focused on your niche, you have a better chance of shining. You still have to perform. You still have to be a great presenter. You still have to entertain. But if your niche is very specific, so while I can coach anybody on camera, I've spent 20 years in health and fitness. So the trainer is really my niche. So I can speak with authority to that group and say, sure, I can give you this enormous list of people that I've helped make it to the top in that top 1% category of trainers. So there's a lot of tools to use, but the first one is it's got to be interesting. It's got to be fun when you're presenting.
I spent 25 years in finance before I ever moved over to this field. That's how old I am. Okay. I've been in this field 10 years. I spent 25 years in finance, and the company that I worked for had an arm that was basically about financial advisor education and business development training. And there was a program that we taught called story selling. And the concept behind it was that, like, finance, similar to health and fitness, but finance is very complicated. And a lot of the concepts are intimidating and confusing. And that if you can make a connection to something familiar to help make the unfamiliar less daunting and more approachable, your chances of actually bringing that client in and being able to influence behavior are greater.
It's a great example.
Yeah. So we used to teach that. And I definitely see a direct connection here, because there are some folks, and I'm just using, not to pick on the financial world, but a lot of the people that are good at numbers aren't good at communicating and speaking and just being themselves. They feel like they need to hold this authority, rather than just getting into this client and bringing the client in and helping them become active participants because they understand what's going on. And so I can totally see the connection in the fitness and the health realm.
Especially in the nutrition realm, especially because when I think about people in more nutrition coaches who are like sort of sanctimonious and I'm the all-knowing, please listen to me, doing these long drawn out rants about food. I think with fitness, it's interesting because, we're moving and it's more of, I guess, it's more of a layered kind of presentation, but it's not a good marketing strategy to just sort of like become another talking head. It's like listening to, hearing the sound of your own voice and maybe impressing your peers, but not connecting or engaging in any way with the audience that you're trying to engage with.
I like to say, if you're a specialist in something, I'm coming to you for the cliff notes. If I wanted to be a trainer, I'd go get my certification. If I wanted to be a nutritionalist, I'd go study nutrition. I want the shortcut. I want tell me what to do. Don't tell me how smart you are.
Right.
And entertain me while you're doing that. That's I keep going back to that because that's what's important. There's, in fitness, nutrition, there might be more nuances to this, but in fitness, you're not going to teach me how to do a push-up. You're not going to teach it. When you get on the airplane, there is nobody who doesn't know how to buckle a seatbelt. You've been in a car before this. So it's it's ridiculous. And we all know that. Can you imagine if you had to sit through the entire plane ride being instructed on what to do safety-wise? No, they get it over with and they move on. And you literally then go to your entertainment. Everybody's got a TV in front of them today, or your phone is accessible now on a plane ride. When you're doing fitness, if you're talking about nonstop, engaging my core, counting reps, talking about my arm position, I'm on to the next trainer as soon as I've done a few of yours.
Mhm.
Why I stay, why I tune back into your podcast is because you're engaging me in a way that other trainers don't, that other podcasts don't. You're bringing something special to the table, which is engagement, which is entertainment. I'm going to jump into what ultimately, what I call it, like the holy grail of storytelling or engagement, is when you can share something of yourself that's uncomfortable. You watch the news, you hear the sound bites on the sidewalk of what's happening, and it's usually the shocking stuff that really grabs us. That can be exhausting, and I'm not a fan of watching a lot of news, but it's what sells: the car accident, the car chase, the murder. So when you share something that's personal, that is just challenging, hopefully it's not one of the things I just mentioned. When you something that's challenging that you've struggled with or worked through in your life, and there is in essence a beginning, middle, and end, and there is a teachable moment or a learnable moment, you really have people lean in and go, wow, that person, they don't say, even though sharing those things are very vulnerable, they make us feel nervous, but people perceive that as courage, and courage is what we all want to follow. We want to follow the person who's not afraid to, charge up that hill, if you will.
Yeah.
I would love to do something with either or both of you if you are game for it.
Yeah,
Please. Yes.
Is share a short story about a moment in your life where everything changed. And I mean, it's not the birth of a child necessarily. I'm talking about one of those moments. Laura, you said you were in finance, so maybe it was that moment where, I'm making this up because I don't know your story, but where you were like, I'm going to give this career up and go after another one. And those are very courageous, vulnerable moments. So that could be it. I don't know. Do either one of you have one you'd like to share?
there were two moments in my trajectory. One was when I was just sick. And I had a client who I had developed a pretty good relationship with, but, it's not like he and I were trading emails and texts off. He was just a client of mine that was easy to talk to. And he was a regular. He sold a lot of my stuff. So I saw him regularly. But I had been sick. And up until then, I had been able to hide it very well. And I walked into his office one day and I must have looked like hell. And I was trying to hold back this cough. I was sucking, and he finally, I'm just going through my normal spiel, and he finally stopped me in the middle of the conversation and was like, wait a minute. How are you? And I'm like, I'm fine. How are you? He's like, no, how are you? He's like, don't take this the wrong way, but you don't look good. What's going on? He's like, all this other stuff can be later. I'm going to sell your stuff. Don't worry about that. What's going on with you? And I just unloaded on the guy about everything I was struggling with from a health perspective and how I could not find help. No one's listening to me. No one's giving me a solution. I'm on all these medications and nothing's working, and I'm at my wit's end. And that's when he said, well, if you're open-minded, I have someone who may be able to help. And that's when he gave me a card of more of a functional practitioner.
How bad was your health problem?
It was just chronic that kept getting repeatedly worse. I went through a period where I had such severe sinus and upper respiratory inflammation that over a 2-year time span, my length of time between infections and illnesses got shorter and shorter and shorter until I was just never well.
And so how did that affect your life, and what did you do about it?
I mean, my job was to be in front of people. I did a lot of public speaking at the time. I did a lot of just one-on-one and client engagement, advisor engagement. And when I can't communicate because I'm coughing all the time, or because of all the medications I'm on, I'm not clear-headed. When I'm trying to drive home from the office and I'm on the road and I can't remember how I got home. I got home clearly, and I didn't kill anybody or myself, but I couldn't remember how I got home. And he was the one who was like, you're not going to, he knew how important my family was to me. I was a single mom at the time. And that's really what drove everything that I did. And he's like, he says what I now say to my clients that are mothers. If you can't take care of yourself, you're going to be no good for those kids.
Mm-hmm.
This job can wait. You're good at it. You blah, blah, blah. You got to take care of yourself. So that was my first impetus towards like, he's right. Like, what the hell? I should not accept this trajectory. There's got to be a better way. And I went to go see this doctor. And I literally, what I loved about this particular guy, and this is what kind of drove me towards health coaching. I didn't realize that's kind of what he was doing at the time, but he engaged me in the process of my own care. It wasn't just
let me ask you a question, Laura. What do you think was the root of your sickness?
It was many things.
And what do you think the root was? What did it like if you had to pick one?
So everything that I was going through was because my entire body was inflamed from head to toe. And a big chunk of that was what I was eating. A big chunk of that was how I was moving, all these other things. But at the end of the day, the root is I was in pursuit of something. I was in pursuit of a level of success in an image.
Okay.
That led me to be making choices.
So this is what I wanted to get to. So part of storytelling, part of engaging your audience, though, is, and it takes this kind of work to get there, is telling the interesting part of your story. And because of course there's nothing that's simplified. But if you think of any story you watch on TV, anything on Netflix, they're not telling every single piece of the story. So what I would say, if you were a trainer coaching, or if you're presenting, I would use your story, Laura, but I would cut it down. It doesn't have to be, it's the interesting truth that we're telling. So for instance, there was a point in my life when I was a single mom. This is how I might open, by the way. Mm-hmm. I'd either open or I would thread this through a workout. There was a point in my life when I was a single mom and my health was failing. I could barely make it to and from the grocery store or finish a day. And again, then you go back to your workout, you're doing, there's ways of weaving this in. Mm-hmm. And I realized that it all stemmed from this pursuit of something that's intangible, this idea that I always had to be better than the next one. I had to show how strong and how purposeful my life was. And ultimately, and again, this is a longer spread out, mm-hmm. but ultimately I realized that I already was successful, that really raising my kids and the work I had already accomplished and just getting through that day sometimes was a huge win. And today I'm very happy because X, Y, and Z. And your story is interesting. People can relate to it. They might not, nobody has the exact same story, but almost everybody can relate to somebody's struggle. That's the real secret in sharing challenges in our life, is that everybody struggles. I look at the two of you and I don't know you very well, and I go, successful, beautiful women, full of power in running this great podcast. Their lives are perfect. Like that's kind of this snapshot you have when you don't know somebody. Mm-hmm. And as soon as you break, and it's particularly for trainers,
yes,
who are, we all, finally it feels like there's been a turning point in our social media, but we look at trainers usually and we judge ourselves against them, even though they're aspirational. Oh, that's a great looking body. We still go, oh, but it makes me feel bad about myself. Or they've got the perfect life. They live in Southern California. They've got this. You would talk to any trainer, they still have their own body issues. None of them have perfect lives. They might be in pursuit of something. Pursuing the life you want. That is a huge checkbox. But the actual idea that their life is somehow perfect is never the case. And mm-hmm. when trainers start to share those differences, there's a trainer that I love and have worked with a lot who works on the platform Supernatural. She's the head coach. It's a VR workout. And her name's Leanne Pedante. And Leanne is so good at and she's very slender. She's very athletic. She's got a big smile. And again, you look at her and you think, she's perfect. Her life's perfect. She is so good at breaking down that veneer and sharing in a way that you feel incredibly connected with her. And that only takes, I mean, when you first see her, you go, to use just a word, you're like, oh, she's like bitchy and perfect and this. And as soon as, because we make judgments like that. And as soon as she starts talking and connecting with you, you're like, wow, I could be her friend. I would love to hang out with her. And you totally forget the differences. You start to feel the similarities. And so that's what the goal is with any presenter. And that's a form of entertainment.
Yeah. Let me tell you about my friend Carolyn. She's an athlete with a passion for health. She'd been health coaching friends, families, strangers, not even knowing it was a thing. She just felt called to help other people live their healthiest lives. Then she discovered the Primal Health Coach certification program, and she went from feeling like an imposter to belonging to an amazing community of like-minded health pros. Confident and finally able to enjoy a fulfilling and profitable career doing exactly what she loves. Carolyn is one of thousands of certified primal health coaches living their best lives and helping their clients do the same. The Primal Health Coach Institute offers a variety of health and fitness certifications and specializations. Our graduates are practicing unique coaching specialties and changing lives in countries all over the world. We're always growing and evolving, so come grow with us. Visit primalhealthcoach.com to check out our courses and offerings. I can offer a really specific anecdote, and I'm going to keep it short, under 2 minutes. But so a couple months ago, I went to visit my dad, and it's my dad, right? And I noticed he kept all of his coffee cups on the counter. I said, "Dad, why don't you put those away in the cupboard? Do you want me to put those away for you?" I thought maybe he was in the middle of doing dishes, and he told me that he can't put his cups away in the cupboard because he can't lift his arm anymore because he's lost the range of motion in his shoulder. He's just an old man that didn't take care of his body. So I teach group fitness classes. I'm repping a well-known brand that you might have
heard of them.
Recognize. Yeah, you've heard of them. So they're pretty big on the production quality of their videos as well. The thing with Les Mills programs is I go and teach a body pump class, and it's the same as every body pump class in the world, right? It's this pre-choreographed thing, but the difference is the instructor. And I teach at a gym with a lot of really very fit young instructors that are, wearing the crop tops, and they have more of an aesthetic going on that I don't have anymore because I'm senior citizen in fitness instructor years. But I came back from that visit and I was teaching the shoulder part of the workout, and this memory triggered. We were doing overhead press, and nobody likes doing that exercise because it hurts their shoulders. And I was like, gang, you don't want to lose the ability to put your arms over your head. Let me tell you about my dad. And we're doing the work, and I told them the story about my dad. He can't put his cups in the cupboard anymore. I said, "This is my dad. This is my hero. He can't lift his arms over his head. He can't put his cups away. You're someone's hero. You're someone's dad. You're someone's mom. You want to make sure you can put the cups away." And I just shared this story because half the time people in a group fitness class, I feel, aren't listening to you, partly because half the time we're not saying anything interesting.
That's right.
The amount of feedback I got at the end of that class, and the number of people who were very interested in learning to overhead press properly after that class was
Aaron,
off the charts.
What's your father's name?
Gary.
Did you share that? Did you share his name with the class?
I didn't say his name. No.
Well, I got to tell you, that is a perfect illustration of what I'm talking about. 100%. You shared some. Who wants to talk about their ailing parents? My mom's suffers from Alzheimer's. And I will share that moment, that painful truth, because lots of people have aging parents that have dementia, and you connected with your audience in a way by sharing that. Look at the result you got, and you're right. And I'm excited now because the byproduct. This is the point. The byproduct of that is your audience. And forgive me, you're beautiful, I'm sure you're a great trainer. But what you have when you're in a gym that most people don't recognize is you've got hundreds of millions of dollars of production in the playlist you've curated. Mm-hmm. And you've got the energy of a group together. Well, when you take those things away and you're presenting on camera or standing on a stage by yourself and you don't have the music and you don't have the crowd who's moving in choreography together, all of a sudden there's no energy in the room. What you did there, and you can do anywhere, is by sharing, by bringing that in. Now you've differentiated yourself from every other trainer that shows up and teaches a class that week. And more people will come to your class. Some won't. Some will be like, and this is good news. Some will be like, oh, she was talking about her dad. Great. You don't want that person in your room. That's perfect, because there's a million other classes. You want the ones that are like, oh my God, I hope Erin talks about Gary again, because that really touched me, or I hope she, now she's sharing something about her dog or her kid or her, because I feel like I know her. I like her. That's what I want my trainers, the people that I work with, to be. I want them to break down that wall so that you go, I feel like I know this person. That's the best feeling you can have.
What's exciting about this, and just to circle back to anybody listening that isn't familiar. So this is important to know, is that every body pump class in the world is basically the same. It's a pre-choreographed fitness program. The difference is the person teaching it. And so you could have a full packed class or an empty class. And the difference is not the programming, because the programming is on point. It's the person teaching. So it really is instructor driven. And so what I think is interesting about this, which I think is the takeaway message, is, look, we're all health coaches. We all feel like the industry and the market is saturated. There's nothing new to say, but there's a new way of saying even the same thing that somebody else is saying.
Right.
And you can get your audience excited about the way you're saying it.
That's a great way of expressing it. I had a group coaching seminar once, and I said, okay, everybody are going to go around the room, demo a push-up. And I said, it should be different. You should stand out. Show me how to do a push-up. And without fail, every trainer there pretty much did the same thing. Hey, what's up, everybody? All right, we're going to get down and do push-ups. Okay, guys, here we go. We're going to do push-ups. And they thought by how loud they are, how much energy that usually comes out in volume, that was going to be the selling point. And then I looked over, and I had an assistant director with me at the time. And I said, Ian, because I literally did not, this was not planned. I said, Ian, teach us how to do a push-up. And he goes, I'm not a trainer. And I said, exactly. Teach me how to do a push-up. And Ian knew what I was going after. And Ian had just had a new baby. And so Ian said, hey, everybody, okay, we're going to learn how to do push-ups, but today I'm going to do it with my newborn, Nathaniel. And he pretended that he took a baby, and he put the baby down in front of him, and he started doing push-ups, but he was nuzzling his nose with Nathaniel and saying cute little things and doing push-ups. And he said, okay, we're going down for our third one. And everybody was leaning in and smiling and cooing and awing like Erin just did. And then I said, okay, everybody, whose push-up do you remember?
Yeah.
Ian, the assistant director, nobody else was like, yeah, but Mason's push-ups were more technical and da-da-da. Ian's not even a trainer.
Yeah.
The interesting truth is what most people would show up for Ian's class over any of these other seasoned trainers, because they've all been doing it a la Les Mills. This is what we're expected to do. So we're going to fall in line and do what everybody else. And what everybody does usually is looks at the best Les Mills trainer and goes, what are they doing? I'm going to copy them. That's the worst thing you can do. The lesson you can learn from anybody who's successful is, and this is the answer, that they've done it differently.
Right.
Yeah.
So if you can show up and teach a class, but do it differently, you're going to win hearts. You're going to win your audience, and they're going to keep showing up. And then the great byproduct is they get results, and you're the hero.
Yeah.
This is something that comes up with our crew a lot, because, our school in particular is founded by a gentleman that many of the people that, not all, many of the people that enroll here have followed for decades, right? He's like their mentor, their hero. And what we hear a lot is, well, Mark's already said it so well. How do I improve on that. And we keep saying it's not about that. What Mark's message resonated with you for a reason, what problem are you solving, but most importantly, for whom, and how do they need to hear it? And how can you put your spin on essentially the same thing, but most importantly, being able to tie it to why it's important to them.
Yes.
To your point, the pull up, the push up. Hey, this is, look, I can get down on the floor with my little boy and I can get back up, by the way. Right. And these are important things as it relates to, just strength and mobility. One of the questions I had and something you talked about was this idea of like building a character, and we have always really tried to drive home the importance of authenticity. So how do you build character, yet still remaining kind of authentic to who you are, so you don't feel like you're in character all the time? How does that come through?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I don't think anybody's asked that specifically. I would say, I'm going to translate and say what character means is performance, meaning when you show up to present and when you show up to teach, that you have to be ready to perform. You have to be in character. That would be another way of saying it. And that takes preparation. There's a skill set. I know lots of people who just wing stuff. Yeah. Being on camera, you cannot wing it. You have to be prepared. I have a whole course that breaks down the smallest things because that's what most people miss. They go from group fitness and somebody yanks them and goes, hey, yeah, Erin's got a packed class. She's going to be great training on camera for this app. It's not true, because unless Erin has had me as a coach, or there's not very many people who specialize in what I do, she's being, thrown to the wolves. There is a whole set of skills that you need to learn to present on camera, where there's no music, where there's no audience. It's you and a piece of glass and a bunch of lights, and somebody says action. And then you're like, oh my God, right. You start counting. All right, 10 squats. It's very hard to do. So you need to be prepared. So the performance, your character, is something that's a very well prepared set list, if you will. That's another example, is if you're a musician and going, well, what are you doing tonight? There's very few people who would get on a stage and go, oh, I'm just going to wing it today. Because those don't turn out that well. They're like, I got a set list and maybe we'll do this other one. But this way, everybody knows, and you're working on a performance, a set list, something that you know is going to please your audience. That was a pretty good answer, Mason.
I think it also will help people feel more confident in front of the camera. Because one of the things we talked about before recording is, we really need to address the new coach who is just a bit shy about being on camera. And you had said something like, that's most of us, there is a subset, when I have twin daughters, they're both 8, and one loves to perform, loves the camera. And she's like, hello. And meanwhile, her sister, she likes to record herself, but she doesn't want anyone watching, so she likes to look at herself. I think this is, I'm sure, a developmental thing. And Sam does too, but Sam likes to be seen, and she's very comfortable in that role. So we have, 2 kids, same age, same parents, same environment, but 2 totally different comfort levels with basically, quote unquote, putting themselves out there, and being prepared is a big one. But you also mentioned there's a set of skills you need to learn. Yeah. Do you mind sharing those?
Well, they're not something I can share in a short podcast, but I'll give you some examples.
Yeah, that'd be great.
So one thing that you guys do very well and you've worked on and you're set with is an opening. So a lot of trainers that are getting in front of the camera often don't. When you're in a class, you're turning on music and you say, let's go. When you're presenting on camera, you need to have an opening. I call it a solid open. And it's very basic, but it's still the fact that you have to have this rubric of understanding what you're doing every time is incredibly helpful, and it grounds you. So a solid open would be your name because it's your brand. It would be a welcome, and it would be a highlight of what's to come. Like those three things right there just set the groundwork for what you're going to do. And then ultimately, when you're really good, the part of what's to come includes the opening or the hook of a story, or what it is that's going to be your through line. So it could be any workout, but part of the opening might be, so glad you're here today. My name is Mace Bendewald. This is going to be a 20-minute HIIT workout, but my arm, I'm just going to open with this. I have been struggling with some pain in it. So this is, for me, this is a challenge workout. So just that hook with the idea, and that's a really, really basic one, is that I'm sharing something that I'm vulnerable about. I'm the pro, but I'm saying that I've got a challenge with my arm. And so when I'm working through this, I might talk about it a la Aaron talking about Gary and threading that in. And it becomes, now you're prepared.
Mm-hmm.
You're prepared and you've started off and you've got this whole mission. That's just the opening.
Yeah.
The other one I'll give you is, and this is a big one for anybody who presents on camera. You, not when it's a Zoom call necessarily, but anything else, you're talking to one person. And if you can pick that one person and put them on the other side of the lens, it's as if I'm talking to my mom. It's as if I'm talking to the client that I had that really, 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 really struggled. And we had this breakthrough and I got more out of it than they did. If you can give yourself a strong avatar on the other side of the lens, you're connected and you have a purpose, as opposed to, which this is true for most people, is you go, okay, God, this panic, you start kind of feeling this sweat and this nervousness because you don't know what you're doing. You don't know who you're talking to. You're just like, I don't understand what performance is. I'm just hoping that if I'm loud enough and jump high enough, that I'm going to somehow do a great job, because people don't know what those tools are. And I spent 20 years figuring it out. You know, some of them I was lucky because I was already a performer. And then the other ones I'd really analyze, like, why did that work? Why didn't that work? One other one is it's Mason's 70-30 rule. That is, if you're a trainer on camera and you have to demo exercises as well, I am not there because you're a better athlete than me. I'm there because you're supposed to be instructing and motivating me to do things so that I get a great workout. So I tell my trainers, I only want 70% of your physical energy, because the rest of it, you have to have there for performance. You have to be able to talk. You have to be able to smile. You have to be able to remember your story, your moves, articulate, all of that. So those are three. Those are just three things.
That last one threw me for a loop. Okay.
Tell me why. Why?
It did, only because I think about, so another anecdote, I had taught,
Yes.
I was the loser that picked up all the holiday classes because everybody else had fun things to do. So I taught so many classes over the last 2 weeks, a ridiculous amount. Very overtrained. I got to the last class of this 2-week stint and I said, oh, you know what? I said to myself, I'm just going to go lighter today with this barbell. I can't, I'm just going to go lighter. So I used lighter weight. And I felt like the class was lame because I've been programmed to role model the, the extra sort of push, right? And I feel like when I am pushing more, I can be more emotive, but I think it just takes practice. Like, just because the barbell weight lightened doesn't mean I should be mellowing out the intensity or the intention with which I'm teaching. So that's an errant thing, but it definitely is upside down from what I've kind of been doing. Well,
nobody is going, I mean, very few. If I'm working out with you and you're my trainer, I'm listening to you. I'm not looking at your weight.
Exactly.
So if you're putting, I don't go, I mean, I'm in my 50s now. So I've learned a lot about fitness for my own body and what it takes. But when I was younger, yes, part of the trainer is to motivate me, but I'm listening to what they're telling me I should do.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I'm not looking at you and going, oh, well, Aaron just put on, 2 more 25s. I'm going to do the exact same thing. I really don't look at your weight. I'm worried about myself.
That's right.
And
Yeah,
so
you're right.
your performance is the most important part.
Yeah, it's just kind of a weird paradigm shift because I think the role model weights thing is even a Les Mills rule. But so I'm thinking through this because I did the P90X workouts. That was, because at the time I was really into like hardcore fitness.
Sure.
And at the time, it was so unique. There was literally nothing in the gym or out that was coming close to what P90X was. Now, now it's a different world because it's like there's trillions of at-home workouts. I mean, from the sublime to the very simple. So from the personal trainer putting their iPhone on a tripod and kind of, moving through exercises to like, we've got Peloton, we've got Tonal, we've got all these things. So I feel like I guess I want to dive into that because when you were talking about, weaving the story through from the intro, I immediately leapt to Peloton because Peloton teachers, good ones, are pretty good at that. The good Peloton teachers that have the big followings, they're always telling these stories that start and weave all the way through. I think and Soul Cycle does that as well. We see that in the in-person fitness realm as well. So I guess the lesson for the fledgling PT who's got their phone on their tripod is to borrow some of the principles that you're maybe seeing in these big platforms, knowing that you're never going to have the audience that Peloton or Tonal has, but you can still borrow some of their techniques for your audience. Of
course. Sure. Absolutely. Like learn from the best. I'm always learning. I'm always looking at the different platforms, who's doing it well, who's not. Everybody likes to point out Peloton. And actually what you just said is the most important is Peloton is just a bike. That's all it is. And it's a stationary bike. It's actually a hard piece of equipment to entertain on. If they did not have excellent trainers and if they did not put a lot of money into their trainers, their platform would not be successful.
Correct.
They also pay a lot for music. Tonal, which I've done a bunch of consulting for, is just a piece of equipment. At first it's like dazzling because it's like, oh, wow, it can do this and it can adjust your weight for you. And it's the trainers on the screen that keep you coming back. Otherwise, it just becomes a big paperweight. It is, as soon as we're used to something, it just becomes a tool. This Zoom podcast, for instance, it used to be like mind blowing do you remember? It wasn't that long ago that when you first saw somebody on video that you could talk to, it was like, what? It was mind blowing. And now nobody's like, all we're doing is talking about technical issues. We don't care. We're like, yeah, we expect this to work great.
Right.
It's the conversation. It's the people. It's the trainers that it's the only constant that keeps changing, that can keep motivating us in a way that's different every single time. So even if you're a trainer just using your phone right now, it does not matter. If you're fantastic at engagement, you're going to win my dollars.
I was thinking this, I wrote this down as we were talking earlier, which is, after years and years of being in the gym and being in the group fitness studio, we always heard this big box gym that I work for says, to the salespeople, get members into classes because people connect to people. People don't connect with a treadmill or a barbell. They connect to people. And so we all of us collectively, we are the draw.
Yes.
Not the gadget, not even at some level. I'd like to actually like your opinion on this, not even the flashiness of the production value, but do you have any tips for people starting out, like in terms of like gadgets or lighting or something that they should invest in? Or is that all kind of back burner stuff?
Yeah. So that's a great question. That's a really great question. So there is, how do I answer this most simply? I'll answer it from a film class I took in the 90s. We were put in a room with 2 monitors. And the professor said, we're going to watch monitor A. I want you to take some notes. Now we're going to watch monitor B, take some notes. It was the exact same program. And the professor said, show of hands, how many people preferred monitor A? One hand went up. How many prefer monitor B? Everybody else's hand went up in the room. And this is not an exaggeration. I had no understanding. I was like, how? I mean, and the professor knew that it was going to be monitor B, but it literally was the same program. And the professor turned him back on and he says, do you know what the difference is? And we had to sit there and watch him again. And it was finally somebody that said, oh, monitor A's picture is better. Monitor B's audio is better. And so the big lesson there is, and most of us in production always get excited about the camera, is that your audio, and you both have good mics, and so do I, your audio is king. Your video is queen. And then your lighting is also incredibly important. But if you have good audio, it resonates in a way, especially when you're doing fitness. That's the number one thing. And so today, I won't take up the time, but the simplest thing, if you're not sitting and doing a podcast, you're going to have they call them wireless microphones, and you're going to clip it close to your mouth on your chest here. And that will make a huge difference. And they have them for iPhones and smartphones today that are, maybe $100, $200. And that is the first investment you should make if you're away from your camera. If you're close to your camera and doing a walk around with it, you don't need it. You can just do that. But if you're setting it up on a tripod and performing, audio's first. Your iPhone, particularly your iPhone, if you can see right now, I'm actually using my iPhone because the video quality, the lenses are superior to what's on your computer or most other just general small cameras. So your iPhone's fantastic. Yeah. Audio's first. And then the last thing is you do want good, even lighting. So Erin, are you facing a window or is that a ring light?
Both.
Both. Okay. So, and what about you, Laura?
I'm both as well, but it's where my window's positioned. Depends on the time of day, will determine.
So for everybody who's watching versus just listening, you can see that all three of us have good light on our faces, and that comes from even light. I'm only using ring lights, and it still looks really well. And then I made the background a little bit darker. But those are very, very simple things. The production value is only in support of the talent. So the audio comes first because that's where you're engaging. That's where you're engaging with your audience the most.
That makes sense.
So there you go.
That's great.
Do you have an opinion around scripting out what you're saying?
Yes, I do.
I did a lot of public speaking, and over time, the better I got at it. Really, all I needed was a well-scripted intro.
Yeah.
And then I had it from there. Yeah. But other people, I also know that if it's something I'm really passionate about, like squirrel, I can go off on a tangent. And sometimes I do find scripting really kind of helps me reel that in. But what are your thoughts on that, especially for people that are new?
Yeah. So scripting is super important because otherwise you kind of panic. I mean, if you've done it forever, it's a different story. I didn't script out my podcast with you today because I'm an expert in the field and anything you ask me, I can speak on. But I did do my research. Like I look into you guys, I look into the podcast, I think what's the audience. I don't just wing it completely. Right. You can do it, but you're not going to be as comfortable and as prepared. So for whatever you do, even trainers and in the courses that I teach, I go, yeah, I want you to script it out. Then, because trainers is like, so I'll really break it down. If you're going to script something out, then technically you want to use a teleprompter and you're going to read. Trainers are not going to do that because they can't be getting up and down and it doesn't work. They can do it for an intro, but ultimately what you do is you script it out so you get all of your thoughts out. So now it's in your database, it's in your memory, and then you create bullet points. And bullet points are what you're talking about, kind of, Laura, is it's a start off for a talking point. So if I was a trainer and I'm doing a HIIT workout, I might put welcome, and then I might put Gary, and then I might put first round of burpees and have just that little bullet point list. And it should be short for anybody listening who's like, ooh, that's a good idea. You want an economy of words. So you want a bullet point is literally like 2 words, and you don't want 50 of them. You want like 6 or 10 max to get you through your workout. And those should just trigger, okay, this is where I should be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
nice.
I love that.
That's great.
Bullet points are super important. Sometimes if depending on the topic and what I was leading into, sometimes I'd write a brief transitional statement.
Yeah, that could work.
I'm connecting thoughts, but it wasn't a full script. It was, if I'm talking about whatever the importance of protein, and then I want to, talk about sources, there may just be a connecting phrase that help me connect the two. So it doesn't seem, or maybe I'm going from something that sounds what might be seemingly unrelated, but really is related. And like this bridge statement that kind of, this is why I'm interjecting this here. But thank you for addressing that, because I know some people can get really nervous around a script. Like, what if I forget it? And you're right, the teleprompter, which by the way, there's apps that do that now.
Oh yeah. You're on your phone. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's also a skill though. That's the other thing. It's like, it's not just magic. When you first are learning how to read a teleprompter, you have to familiarize yourself with how it works. There's pacing, there's timing. It's another technical gadget that you have to learn how to use. So if you're going to do that, give yourself time and be patient, and don't expect it to be a miracle overnight. It is another skill to learn.
You still have to practice it for sure.
Yeah. It can sound very strange and robotic if you don't.
Yes. Well, and people often you'll look at a lens and your eyes will glaze over and you start going like, okay, I want to welcome you today to my talk about how to feel more comfortable on camera.
I caught a friend of mine had posted into his Instagram stories, and I was watching and I was like, this is so different. And it wasn't like his voice inflection. He was doing a pretty good job because I closed my eyes and listened. And I was like, if I close my eyes and listen, it sounds good. But if I look at his face, he's just not even, he's not engaging with his own face, because you can see your own face. Anyways.
Yes.
Yeah. He was so,
so that's the part that takes practice, is to read and feel natural while reading, which means sometimes glancing away a little bit, slowing down, speeding up, smiling a lot, using your hands. There's, again, tons of stuff to performing well on camera.
Yeah. Gosh, there's so many things we can ask you. I want to get your expert opinion from the perspective of fitness trainers, because I think that's kind of who we're really mostly speaking to here, although folks who are in the nutrition space as well, we do our stuff on camera too. In fact, I'm thinking, when I redo my online curriculum for my nutrition program, I'm going to make it more entertaining. I'm going to weave some stories in instead of just making people's eyes glaze over about insulin. But just back to fitness though, what is your hunch with respect to brick and mortar facilities online? Is it like, listen, get moving online because brick and mortar is going away? Or are we experiencing like maybe a boomerang effect where people are coming back into gyms after the pandy? What do you think?
The pandy? That's awesome. Listen, talk about entertainment. Hey, everybody. The next pandy's coming soon. Right? You just made one of the worst moments in history somehow adorable.
That's what I was trying. That's what I was going for.
Well done.
The pandy bear is coming out soon. It's a great question. It's asked all the time, and it's actually very clear to me and most people who are really investigating that space, is that they're both here to stay. People like myself love community, and almost everybody does. Like, I don't like going to the gym per se to work out, but I crave community in so many other ways. But it could easily be the gym. I'm fortunate that I have enough space that I have my own workout stuff here. But like, I just picked up pickleball because the rage of it is not just, it's like, everybody's like, wow, it sounds so silly. It's the fastest growing sport in the US. And I will say largely because it's fun, it's easy to learn, and the community, because it's not taken like tennis is a little hoity-toity. You know, you gotta have a lot of space, and it's kind of an expensive sport. Pickleball, you are on a smaller court and you're playing with 4 people, and it's fun. It's just a fun sport to do. So I love the community aspect of that. If you are a small gym, a large gym, it doesn't matter. You need to have a video component. We all travel more today than we used to. So pick whatever gym it is. If you're on the road, the gym doesn't want to lose your connection. So whether it's a free app with on the road workouts, or it's my favorite trainer, Aaron, I still want to be able to work out with you when I'm traveling. That is, so if you're brick and mortar, it is a must today to have some hybrid version. But there's plenty of space just online. There's plenty of space. There's millions and millions of people who make a very, very happy living just on the digital side. But brick and mortar is not going away. There's definitely a trend more getting away from the large box gyms back into boutique gyms, because it goes to community and the experience.
Yeah. I mean, I would concur there too. I think we're seeing them pop up all over the place, many of which are truly just independent little boutique gyms. But there's a lot of sort of chains now and franchises that kind of like, they give you that feeling, but it's really like Orange Theory is one example, F45. So you have, the owners and the trainers that are in those gyms and everyone's doing the same workout. But to Aaron's point, it might be the same workout universally, but it's the trainer that kind of brings it to life and the people that are there that draw people into one location or another. I can see this also huge for people that run like cooking or recipe-based businesses, where you're demonstrating a recipe or a cooking technique on camera, and you're weaving in stories about why you're cooking that particular meal. And, I grew up with this particular meal, and this is why I loved it so much. And this is what makes the way I do it a little bit different. And,
Well, Laura, you've hit one of my lessons is I tell trainers, I say, go watch a cooking channel.
Yeah.
Because I go, there are 10 billion cooking shows out there now. And it's like, how many different things can you cook? We all aren't trying a completely new, like I'm not all of a sudden eating alligator tomorrow. Like we are, when you watch a cooking show, you are getting stories, and those stories help feed your appetite, literally and figuratively. And so that's, because sometimes trainers are like, I don't give a storytelling. What? Like, that's annoying. Why do I have to learn that too now? And I go watch a cooking show and then tell me if it's annoying. You come back and they're like, and I say, come back with examples, and they'll come back with exactly what you just said. It's pretty cool.
I feel like this has been very useful. I think our audience will take a lot out of this, whether they're planning to, kick off an online training biz or just borrowing some of these ideas for their content marketing, their messaging when they're flapping their gums on Instagram. I think it's useful. I really enjoyed learning from you. Thank you, Mason.
Oh, thank you, Aaron. Thank you, Laura.
Yeah. I hope what everybody takes away from this is the importance of, I don't know, I guess how much easier it will be to actually be on camera if you're prepared, work on those skills and practice, and invest in a couple of basic technologies that will make a massive difference in just the appeal and the engagement with your content. Doesn't have to be thousands of dollars. For a few $100. I don't know. I mean, these days, how much does an iPhone cost? But to be,
the iPhone's expensive, but
you're
using it for a million things.
Yeah, exactly. You're doing it. It serves many purposes, but I hope what people are taking away is this doesn't have to be as daunting as you think it is. And that anybody that's entering into this space as an entrepreneur in the health and wellness space, you've got to be seen. People need to know who you are. And you need to have a story. That's the number one thing that we teach in our business development, the content in our course is tell your story. So
great.
Awesome. Thank you so much. This has been great.
Yeah, my pleasure.
This podcast was brought to you by Primal Health Coach Institute. To learn more about how to become a successful health coach, get in touch with us by visiting primalhealthcoach.com/call. Or if you're already a successful health coach, practitioner, influencer, or thought leader with a thriving business and an interesting story, we'd love to hear from you. Connect with us at hello@primalhealthcoach.com and let us know why we need to interview you for Health Coach Radio. Thanks for listening.